Have a conversation with the GM of The Room to tell us what this is all about. I have the day's proverb in the meantime. It's from Ivory Coast. Everybody loves a fool, but nobody wants him for a son.
No, please.
Everybody loves a fool, but nobody wants him for a son. Peter Maina Muriithi is the general manager of The Room. Peter, good morning.
Good morning, Eric.
Good to have you on the show. Welcome to the hot seat of Kenya's biggest conversation.
Thank you. Good to be here.
When you hear this proverb from Ivory Coast, what do you think the Ivorian Wahengas were thinking of? Everybody loves a fool, but nobody wants him for a son.
I think probably what was going on through their minds is that everybody likes to have a good laugh, and so a fool makes everybody laugh. But obviously, you wouldn't want your son to be the person people are laughing at. Laughing with, maybe, but laughing at, no.
No. You don't want your son to be the lady of the ridicule, the laughing stock. Okay. Peter, The Room. We've been talking about it, and we're talking about tech talent, this place where the best tech talent is to be found. It's called The Room. So let's start with what is The Room? What's the genesis of this whole thing of The Room?
Yeah.
And where are you heading with it?
Cool. The Room is part of the Africa Leadership Group. So people actually have a knowledge of the Africa Leadership Academy, which was started in South Africa 17 years ago, and later on the Africa Leadership University. Both of them were started by Fred Swanika, who really had this vision or this goal of creating the next generation of African leaders, right? And so The Room really came as a result of that, because these institutions have been developing talent for over 17 years. 2 years ago, we started what we're calling ALX, which was meant to basically accelerate the work that the Africa Leadership University was already doing. And ALX has been delivering its courses online, which has meant a couple of things. It has meant that it was very, very scalable. You know, before you had to go to our campus either in Mauritius or in Rwanda to have access to that education. But now, because ALX is online, it means, you know, anyone across the continent can have access to it. As long as you have access to a computer, you have access to stable internet, right? And so as we were developing this top talent, you know, employers started coming to us and asking, hey, you guys are saying you're developing top talent. Can we get access to this top talent, right? And that's where the idea of The Room came in, right? So if you think about, you can even visualize it as a physical room.
Yeah.
You know, once people have graduated from the Africa Leadership University, or they've graduated from the courses they're doing with ALX, then they get into this room, and this is what our talent pool is. And so if you're an employer and you're looking for somebody, a software engineer or a cloud engineer, a cloud DevOps engineer, you know, you come into The Room and you have all these people. And the beautiful thing about The Room is that we've collected a lot of data points on these students, right? We've been with them on their journey, some of them close to 4 years, you know. And so it's one of those things, it's estimated that people exaggerate. Around 80% of people exaggerate on their CVs, right? So by the time you're getting someone's profile on LinkedIn, by the time they're sending you their CV, you know, 80% of what you're seeing there is exaggerated.
Really?
Yeah.
80%?
80%.
Okay, so the only thing that's true there is just the name.
Your name and your date of birth. I mean,
And
80%
And the phone number. And the phone number. Right?
And email.
Yeah. And that's the reason why most employers now, especially in the tech field, you know, before they hire you, they actually have to give you a test.
Can I ask you, are we saying that 80% of the CVs received have false information or are exaggerated? Or are we saying of all the CVs received, 80% of the information on said CV is exaggerated? Which one are we talking about here?
80% of CVs are exaggerated to some extent.
Wow.
Right? And so employers, in terms of the kind of importance or weight they put on the CV, it's a very fast point of screening, where they look at the CV and they have a sense of where were you educated, what kind of experience do you have, and then you have a set of other steps that you have to go through. And in the tech space, it's really about what you can do, right? So we've gotten to a point where, you know, employers are not really keen on, you know, where did you go to school, what did you study, but what can you do, what projects have you worked on, and they actually do send you, you know, an assignment for you to work on. So the beautiful thing about The Room is that, you know, our relationship with our talent does not start at the point where they've already graduated, right? It starts from when they start studying.
Right.
So by the time they're graduating, we have all those data points. We know which projects they worked on. We know the scores that they got, right? We know the internships that they've done. So in a certain sense, it's already vetted talent. By the time we're getting access to somebody from the room is that they've already been vetted.
Okay.
I think let's start from this ALX point, all right, where ALX is providing training. What kind of training is ALX doing?
Yeah. So we have a couple of tech courses. Our flagship tech course is a software engineering program. It's 1 year long. It's actually quite intense. Students have to dedicate on average around 70 hours a week. It's a bit crazy. And the way the modality works is that it's really 70% doing, 30% theory and 70% doing. And it's been created to mimic what the actual work environment is, right? In the tech space, things change all the time, right? If you studied software engineering, say 3 years ago, and you haven't practiced, and you're not struggling to keep abreast with what's going on, you'll become irrelevant, right? And so the way the program has been structured, it's been structured really to help you to learn how to learn. So in as much as you're gaining the practical skills and expertise for you to actually work because you're working on the projects, the mentality really is you're learning how to learn. You learn from your peers in your class, or in your cohort, but also because it's learning by doing, you really learn how to look for solutions, right? Which is really critical for any software engineer in their place of work. Because most of the times, software engineering is about problem solving.
Okay.
Your CEO or your manager will come and say, we have this problem. We're not getting to our clients. We need to figure out a different channel of getting to our clients. It will never be, I need you to do X, Y, and Z. So you have to really think outside the box. You have to be aware of the solutions that are out there in the market. You have to know what competition is doing, right? For you to be able to figure out, what is the best way for us to operate. So there's already that mindset that is being built into these students as they go through the programs.
So then are we possibly seeing the death of the almighty CV based on what you're saying now?
I think there's still some value in your CV, because in a certain sense, the CV is what gets you through the room, right? So for most organizations, the CV will get you through the door, but then like what you can do will do the job, will get the rest, right? So I'm not saying that we're going to see the death of the CV. Maybe at some point, right? I don't think we are there yet, but as we get more and more better at collecting data from the training points and from the experience that these guys are getting. Because what we actually do is that once they get into our pool, we track them not only when they're studying, but even after that, once they get employed. If they get a job through us, we get continuous feedback from employers, right? So in a certain sense, if you think about a software engineer who's been trained by us and then they've actually worked for 3 years with us, they wouldn't even need a CV, because we have a very good sense of what their capabilities are, of what their strengths are. You won't even need references, because we have direct feedback from the employers as to what these people can do, what their mindsets are. So in a certain sense, a software engineer who's been with the room for 3 years, 4 years, you can basically come to the room and say, I want to know what Peter here can do.
Okay.
Right?
So you
and
become
give you a very detailed profile for what this person can actually do.
You become the main referee.
Exactly.
So Ndu wants to get into the Ndu now as somebody who will then be employed by somebody else later. How does this process play out? How does it all start? I'm in university studying particular course. How then do I get connected? And then how then do we walk through the process?
Yeah. So assuming that you wanted to get into software engineering, for instance, you'd go to alx.com. You'd apply to join the software engineering program. The application process will take you maybe an hour and a half, where we'll test for multiple things. You'll get accepted into the program, and then you'll have to go through the 1 year program. What that would mean is, practically speaking, almost every week or every 2 weeks, you'll have to submit a project. So it's a combination of, you learn something and then you work on projects. And most of the projects you have to work with your peers as well. And the beautiful thing about ALX is that it's Pan-African. So some of the people in your cohort are going to be people in Nigeria, people in Johannesburg. And in a certain sense, you also acquire that worldview. You get a very good sense of, what's going on in other parts of the continent, right? If you're successful and you graduate from the program, we will then invite you to become part of the Room Fellowship, what we're calling the Room Fellowship, right? So that's really our talent pool. So you can opt in to the Room Fellowship, where you're basically telling the room, if you get any opportunities out there, I'm open to them.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's how it would work for you.
So it's like an alumnus program.
Exactly.
Now, what is the minimum entry qualification?
For the software engineering program, as long as you can survive through it, it's good to go.
As long as you're alive.
As long as you're alive.
and you can survive through this rigorous 70 hours a week program,
Yeah.
it's fine.
Exactly.
Nothing about the KCSE grades, nothing, whether you have zero post secondary education or whether you have a PhD, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter what papers you have. What matters is whether you have the capability of actually learning and actually doing the job. So in a certain sense, it's a very practical kind of thing. And, you know, our students actually, at the end of it, what's valuable is not really the certificate you get at the end of it, is the skills. And it's something that we've seen a lot in the tech space. There are very many people, and you'll talk to people, you'll find out who started in a career in botany, for example, and then they ended up in tech. I've met a couple of them, and I always ask, so how did you end up in tech? And it's usually like very interesting answers. Some of them will tell you, I went and learned on YouTube, right? Or I landed an internship at this place and started learning from somebody else. So if you think about tech, is one of those spaces that has very low barriers to entry, as long as you're smart enough. And the thing is, opportunities are not equally available for everybody, right?
Okay.
So in a certain sense, you don't want to put barriers of entry for a person who's smart enough, but they're not able to pay to go to university, right? So that's really the problem that we're trying to solve, at least for our talent. If you're smart enough, and if you have the tenacity of actually going through this course, we shall give you the skills to become a software engineer.
Okay. So what other courses are you offering? You've mentioned software engineering a number of times.
Yeah.
What else?
So there's a software engineering course. Then we have a cloud engineering course as well. We have data science and DevOps. So that's within the tech space. And we are also in the process of developing new courses. You know, from next year, around March thereabout, we'll have a Salesforce implementation program, as well as AWS cloud program.
Okay.
Right. So these additional programs we are putting out into the market are specializations for people who already have a software engineering background, right? But the software engineering course is really like the core or the foundation for all that.
So how many people have you been able to connect with employers so far since you launched the room? Since you got people who joined the room cohort, and it's got another room cohort, it's called the room what?
The room fellowship.
The room fellowship.
Yeah.
So people who've opted into the room fellowship, how many have you been able to connect with employers and actually gotten jobs? So
it's very interesting. For the last 2 years, within the entire Africa Leadership Group, the talent pool that we have at the room comes from all those sources. The number of people who've gotten jobs is 43,000. The people who we have made assisted placements, that means that employers have actually come to the room and they've requested for talent, is around 100, because we are still starting on that front. Yeah.
100 people.
100 people.
Assisted
placements, which means employers have actually come to the room. They said, I'm looking for so-and-so. I'm looking for a software engineer. I'm looking for a data scientist, right? One of the mandates that we actually have from the MasterCard Foundation is to create 2 million jobs by 2030 across Africa.
Yep.
So in a certain sense, in as much as we are looking to make assisted placements, we are also very keen on our graduates getting jobs by themselves. Right. So in as much as we are very keen on pushing for placements through the room, most of our students, because we are really educating people at scale, will end up getting jobs by themselves, which is actually aligned to our goal and our vision at the end of the day.
Could you expand a little further on why the concentration is on tech?
Yeah. So currently there's a very, very big shortage of tech talent globally. It is estimated that there are around 26.5 million techies around the globe. 5.5 million of them are based in India. 4.5 million of them are based in the US. I would ask you to guess how many of them are based in Africa, the entire African continent.
5 million. A million.
A million. Yeah, pretty close to that. 700,000.
Okay.
So in a certain sense, if you look at Africa has one of the biggest populations in the world. It's not proportional, right? California alone has a software engineer population of 700,000. Very similar to what you have in the entire Africa.
On the continent, yeah.
And please keep in mind, the average age of Africa is 19 years. Most of these Western countries are aging, right? So if you're thinking about the next source of tech talent to power businesses in the world, it's Africa, right? And we've already started seeing that scramble for that talent here in Kenya. You have the global corporates who are coming to set up their talent centers here, the likes of Google, Microsoft, and they're really, they've driven up salaries because the demand for tech talent has gone up, and it's going to get even worse. And local companies are struggling, right? We know that in this day and age, digital transformation is a critical enabler to your business. So even your mama mboga, for example, very soon in the next 2 years, they will be selling online. They'll have a website, they'll have an Instagram page, and that's how they're going to be selling.
Yep.
Nowadays you can buy, kibanda food on Glovo. Who would have thought?
Right.
So in a certain sense, in as much as tech is a critical enabler for business, and it's going to continue to be, there is this acute shortage for tech talent, and it's going to get even more acute. So in a certain sense, it's very, very important for us to really think how we are building that pipeline of tech talent, right? So that's really why we've decided to focus on tech talent.
And can you deliver? So we talk about a growing demand. We're looking at a market now whereby e-commerce has blown through the roof in the last 2 years. Across Africa and across the world, right? We're looking at businesses in Kenya that 2 years ago, just before COVID hit, you'd have to walk into a shop to sell or to buy. Now you don't have to do that anymore. So with this explosion, with the room, for example, there is demand, as you say, for conglomerates who come into Kenya, but there's also demand for local businesses to have people who can meet the requirements of this tech space. Is there enough? Are there adequately right now? If you have a surge in the next 50 days, another year, 50 weeks, another year, if you have a surge in demand, is the room able, with the demand, able to deliver the people needed for businesses should they come knocking?
We hope to be able to deliver that, right? Obviously, like we have a very ambitious goal to next year to train 70,000 people across Africa. And if you're to think about the different markets, Kenya would account for around 20% of that. So in a certain sense, one of the things that we've been able to do with ALX is really to scale our delivery, right? Because it's being done online, because internet penetration in Kenya is super high. We've really made it accessible for anyone who can have access to a computer, who can have access to the internet, and they have the right mindset and the grit to actually go through the program. So in a certain sense, we are making it easy for the masses, if you're interested in software engineering, to actually get into it. The barriers of entry have been lowered. So in a certain sense, if you're to think about traditional education, for you to train or for you to produce, so to speak, a software engineer with 3 years experience, it would basically take you 7 years. This guy would have to go to campus, they'd spend 4 years, 5 years there, do a computer science degree, then start working. Then 7 years from now, that's when you get a software engineer with 3 years experience. The question is, if there's a shortage of software engineers with that kind of experience now, are we willing to wait 7 years to get that? And in any case, the universities can only take so much.
Right.
So through our ALX arm, we're really trying to scale that. We're trying to produce software engineers at scale and also to give quality, right?
But also faster. Because
Exactly,
the university
faster.
is taking 3 years to graduate a software engineer. You're taking a year.
Yeah. So it's actually
Same
faster.
quality?
Same quality.
Peter,
If not better. If not better.
But Peter, listen. A university is taking 3 years to produce a software engineer, all right? And by the time this person is being admitted to a software engineering course, there's some certain level of qualification that they have. This is somebody who's really done very well in high school in those relevant subjects, math and sciences, right? You are saying it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter your math, doesn't matter your sciences, just come in. As long as you can commit and you work hard, you will within 1 year become a software engineer. Really, Peter?
I'm not saying it doesn't matter the math or the science. That's critical actually. And it's not an either or. Quite a big chunk of the people who go through our courses are university graduates.
Okay.
And diploma holders as well, right? So in a certain sense, what you are seeing is that, and many employer partners will tell you this, you'll go to a university and spend 4 years studying computer science, which is highly theoretical. they get into the workplace and they still need additional training because they never really got those hands-on skills that they need to start programming, right? I was being told the other day, I won't mention which university, but when they're doing their exams at the end of the semester, they actually write code on a piece of paper.
What are you talking about?
Yeah. They write code on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
So in a certain sense, like, it's the way we think about it is complementary, right?
Yeah.
If I'm doing a computer science degree in university, I can also go through this ALX course. And it's because it's practical and you actually get to work on projects, right? You actually get those hands-on skills that you need to thrive when you start working, right?
Okay.
So it's not an either or, but it's really, equipping people with the right skills that they need to actually deliver when they get the job.
So it's mostly the upskilling. So you've got it works
It's a bit
best.
of both.
Works best for people who have got the basics.
Exactly.
And then they come in and through ALX they upskill and then they proceed and they're better.
Yeah.
All right. But then there are very many others who do not have that background in engineering who come here and they excel just after 1 year of going through the ALX course.
Yeah.
From the feedback that you get from employers, how are they faring? I mean, whom do the employers find to be better? What is it that the employers say that, okay, you've got very many, you're collecting data. From your own analysis, when the employers are giving you feedback, what is it that makes those that excel and those that are not excelling not excel?
It's actually a very interesting question because we've spoken to quite a number of employers and most of the feedback, a lot of the times, has nothing to do with technical capability and has a lot to do with mindsets. I was speaking to a tech founder the other day. We had an event at the Nairobi Garage, and he was telling me that he had hired 2 software engineers, and he had given them a share ownership plan where if they worked with him for 2 years, they would get shares. And he assumed that he had them in the bag, right? He was basically looking for a way of getting software engineers to work for him for a long time.
Yeah.
Because retention had been a problem.
He's telling them, look, let's go with me, the whole hog.
Partnership.
We work hard, we gain, we grow together.
Exactly.
Okay.
Do you know how long it took for one of the first software engineer to decide to leave?
How long?
2 months. Right. So for many people, the problem is actually the mindsets. People have a very get-rich-quick mentality.
Yeah.
Right. And in a certain sense, employers are really struggling with that. So one of the key things that we do, in the entire Africa Leadership Group ecosystem, but at the room specifically, is that, it's not just about getting the technical skills, but it's about, changing mindsets, giving
leadership is a mindset issue.
Exactly. Selling them that vision of, we want to transform Africa, the future leaders, our future is actually in their hands. And at the same time, the very nature of the course really gets them to, they need to really be able to push through tough times, right? So in a certain sense, by the time you're getting a graduate who's gone through a software engineering program, it's not just the skill sets that they have, but it's the tenacity and the mindset that they acquired while doing this course. And we continue to invest in them even after they graduate. They join this room fellowship. We continue to give them training. We give them access to the network, within this room fellowship,
right.
And they continue to grow. And I really think, when I think about the feedback that we've gotten from employers, really one of the key things that has stood out is that mindset. They're really, like, the room fellows, they are well put together, their soft skills are on top, and they have the right mindset for the workplace.
Okay, let's take a break. It's 28 minutes to 9. We have in the room Peter Maina Muriithi. He is the general manager of The Room, not this one, not the Situation Room, but The Room, theroom.com. And what's it on social media at Twitter?
The Room Global.
The Room Global on Twitter, and theroom.com. The Room, talent vetted for you, custom to you, working for you. That's what we're discussing this morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
In the room, you have Eric Latif Nduoko and Peter Maina, the general manager of The Room. You had a question for me?
Right. So, we're looking at the space where people who are studying towards a degree then have an opportunity to then be trained and work and, some of these other skills. How would then the younger generation be impacted? Because we're looking at people, you said 19 is the average, but then we've got millions who are 13 and 12 who in the next 4 years will be in this same campus. And if you look at the other side of things, we have people who are full-time university students, but have full-time jobs in this tech space. So we often say that if we're going to get people into that mindset, whereby the world is going to be looking at the African continent, probably the time to attract them is when they're in the lower schools. So is there a space whereby those who have an interest then can also join this kind of learning and education?
Yeah, that's actually a very interesting question. And the reason why I say that is because on multiple occasions, we've actually gotten some of our graduates to go back to primary school and high school to give back. And when I say give back, it's in the form of mentorship, just to go back and speak to the students about what they've done, what the experience is. And in some cases, it's actually gotten technical coaching, right? And what you're saying is really true. In this day and age, digital literacy is as important as being able to write and read, right? So in a certain sense, it really has to start at that primary level where people are conversant with what's happening in the tech space. You know, they have some basic use of the computer, and those who are interested in getting into coding can actually have the opportunity to do that. So one of the things that we are actually going to be doing in Nairobi, you know, with this talent pool that we have, our graduates, the Room Fellowship,
right,
we are going to be starting clubs, coding clubs in high schools, where our talent pool has the opportunity to actually give back.
So it's like mentorship.
It's mentorship, so it's double pronged, right? On the one hand, it's general mentorship, just to show the guys in high school that you can make it. This is what my journey has been. You know, you need to work hard, do hard things. We actually ask them to do hard things. That's one of our taglines. But at the same time, for those who might be interested in tech, they might go a level deeper. Right, and right now we're looking for people to partner with, because we realize at the high school level it's not just a problem of getting people who are skilled to actually come and teach, but it's also a hardware problem. Many of these schools don't have computers, or if they do, the ratio of students to computer is crazy, right? So in a certain sense, it's an ecosystem problem. There are many players who have to come together to try and figure that out. But one of the things really we are thinking of doing, because we have a lot of graduates, and we're going to be having even more graduates, I think would have quite a bit of impact with these coding clubs in the schools where, you know, these young minds are exposed to the world even before they graduate.
I agree.
There's a whole issue of mindset, like you talked about. So the African Leadership Program, the African Leadership University and all, trains people to become leaders, the future leaders of Africa. Now, ALX is part of the African Leadership Program, but you're offering your courses online, and they are compacted because, I mean, it's a year to just understand how to become a software engineer. How do you infuse that leadership element into the ALX programs?
Yeah. So the leadership element is something that it takes a whole lifetime to imbue, right? So obviously within our programs, we actually have a leadership core where there's a set of soft skills that they learn. And, you know, the main angle or how we pitch it is for them to be ethical and entrepreneurial leaders, right? So in that leadership core, the key things really that they learn is, you know, if you're going to be in a position of, you know, influence or power in business or in politics, you actually do have an obligation to help your fellow countrymen, right? But as you mentioned, right, on the one hand, that's theoretical. But when the rubber hits the road is really when it comes to the actual doing, right? So one of the things that we're really keen on doing once these people graduate and in our fellowship is to get them to give back to community, right? So remember when I mentioned that we have quite a number of data points on these students as they go through the course, and we continue to collect those data points even after they graduate once in their talent pool. It's going to become so robust so that in a certain sense, you know, I can be able to tell you this person has been able to participate in community outreach. You know, they've gone to X number of primary schools. They've been giving coding classes to X number of people. This is the impact that they've actually had on society. So in a certain sense, the leadership element is not only theoretical, but you can actually see this is what these people are doing to contribute to society.
All right. Now that we're getting away from the theory into practice. So I'm an employer. I'm looking for certain tech talent. Why should I come to the room? And what am I going to get in the room?
Yeah. So the room has a we are building a strong pipeline for tech talent. So right now, employers are struggling to find the right tech talent. So the talent in our pool is already vetted. Typically, if you wanted to hire a software engineer, you'd put an ad on LinkedIn or online. You'd get maybe 500 CVs.
Yeah.
You'd have to sift through 500 CVs, and that takes time, right? So imagine that you're working on a project. You want an app built or you want a website built. The average time to hire somebody is between 3 to 4 months, right? And there's an opportunity cost to that. That's time that you could have spent actually building that app or building that solution, right? And there's also a cost to it, right? You need somebody who's dedicated to going through the CVs, 500 of them, making a short list, interviewing those people. So in a certain sense, because our talent pool is already vetted, right, and you have all those data points, we really shorten the amount of time that you need to get the right person. And obviously, you don't have to sift through thousands of CVs. If you come to us and you have a set of requirements, I'm looking for someone with this number of years of experience. You can code in this. It's a front-end developer, etc., etc. We can very easily match you with a short list of people who match that criteria. So in a certain sense, whereas it would typically take you 3 to 4 months to fill a role, in this case, it could take you even 3 weeks to fill that role. It's relatively risk-free because this talent has already been vetted. So in a certain sense, for business, it's taking the hassle out of the hiring process and really ensuring that you're getting the right quality.
At what fee?
At what fee? So we usually charge, it depends on the level of experience that you're looking for and the budget that you have, but typically between a month or 2 months worth of salary is what you would pay us for the placement, right? But you're also operating with what you're calling talent as a service model, where you could actually get into a contract with a room, and you have this person seconded into your organization as a contractor, right? So in a certain sense, you pay the room, and the room pays the talent, and we are responsible, for the admin work, the payroll, and we actually invest in the continuous development. So in a certain sense, it's a very easy way for you to scale up your tech team. So assume that, for instance, you're working on a 6-month project and you need a group of 10 software developers, different range of skill sets, right? You can be able to very easily build up that team, build your product for 6 months, and then that's the end of your contract, right? So you don't need to hire in-house for a project that's only going to last 6 months. Because if you think about it, if it takes you 4 months to hire, it'll take you 4 months, you hire, you take 6 months to build the product is done, and then you need to scale back down, right? So for a typical, tech recruiter or a tech founder, especially entrepreneurs, it's really a hassle for you to be able to do that. So the room will actually give you the flexibility of scaling up or scaling down your tech team as you deem fit.
Sounds very good. But Peter, just clarify a couple of things. I'm hearing a number of things happening here. So one, because I'm coming to the room, I will find experts who've already done the vetting for me, who will also look at my requirements. You'll ask me a couple of questions just to make sure that you get exactly what I'm looking for. And then you'll provide me with a short list of people. You can even help me with the recruitment process, the recruitment journey, up to the point where I identify the suitable candidates. Sounds like a HR agency.
It's part of it is very similar to what a HR agency would do, but it's also very different because remember, we have actually trained this talent, right? So what's an HR agency would do? They're basically an agent. They're connecting one person. They collect
CVs from wherever.
Exactly.
Put them in a pool and then connect them with the employer.
Exactly.
The difference is that you are not only collecting CVs, you are training people and putting them in the room. Well, and asking them to join the room, and then now you connect them.
Exactly. Which is the biggest part, which is the biggest value add actually.
Okay. Right? The fact that you know where this person has come from.
Yeah.
Their skill set.
Exactly.
Second point of confusion is when you say you can actually offer me this as a service. So I am outsourcing my software engineering needs to the room. I pay the room a certain fee. They'll take care of all the other admin costs, paying the statutories and everything, taking care of the person's leave and all, and I'll have my work done.
Exactly.
So you're an outsourcing company?
To some extent, yes. So in a certain sense, the way we like to think about ourselves is we are a business enabler.
Okay.
And we really try to think, how can we enable businesses to focus on what they're good at, right? So if you're running a restaurant and you want to start delivering online, your core business is not developing a tech platform. Your core business is cooking, right? So in a certain sense, if you have the flexibility of outsourcing your tech talent and getting it as you need, you have the luxury of focusing on your core business, which is what you're supposed to be doing anyway. So in a certain sense, it's really giving business that flexibility of leveraging on tech talent, which is so critical at this point in time, without spending too much time and too much effort thinking through the tech, which is not their core business.
Before Ndu comes in, I know she has a question on this. Now that you've said you've vetted, okay, so I came in and I joined the program. I went through the ALX training and you asked me a couple of questions. Of course, I still have my CV. If on my CV I claim to have gone through a software engineering or computer science course and I finished and graduated, do you verify whether what I claim to have as academic credentials is real?
Yeah. So what most employers do nowadays is that they will see that you have a computer science degree, and then they'll go ahead and give you an assignment to do, right? So the point of the assignment, nobody cares whether you have a software degree or not. It's really, how are you going to execute on the assignment? And it's very similar to what we do at the room, right? So in a certain sense, you can come and say, I have a software engineering degree, whatever we say, like people exaggerate and they do whatever it is. But when the rubber hits the road, when you actually have to deliver on projects, that's really when you know someone's competence or not. So that's really the best way of measuring someone's competence.
Okay, so say somebody gets then, an organization then gets a candidate from the room. This person is hired. In terms of management of that individual, does the management then now get handed over to said company, or does the management of the individual stay then under the room? Or once you've handed them over, then they deal with their internal HR processes and policies with this individual, or do you then still keep tabs on your person? Number two, should anything go wrong, do you then refer back to the room and say, well, this couldn't work out for whatever reason, can you handle, or can you get us somebody else? How does then that work in terms of person management?
Yeah, cool. So to answer your first question, we are operating with two models, as I had mentioned before.
Yes.
So there's a direct placement model where you'll come and you love a candidate and say, I want to hire this person outright. I want them in my books. I want to manage them entirely. And that's that. So you'll just pay a one-off placement fee. And whatever kind of arrangement that you have with your own employees is the exact same that you'll have with them, because you've taken them on and they're your employee, right? In the second model, where it's the talent as a service and that person has been contracted to you from the room, then we still keep tabs because we actually are contracting them to you, right? So in a certain sense, in addition to the admin work that goes into it, we are responsible for them actually delivering. And if after 2 months, 3 months, they're not delivering, you can actually come back to the room and say, hey, this software engineer who's been seconded to my organization is not delivering. We had agreed on a certain set of deliverables and this is not happening. Either we address it somehow or we replace them with somebody else. So in a certain sense, there is a mechanism for getting feedback from an employer based on what's happening on the ground, and we can be able to rectify that situation.
Okay. So, this person that comes in and you hand them over the one-time thing and it goes on. So should they come back, should the situation not work out, can they come back and still be on that initial plan that they had because it didn't work out?
Yeah.
Even if you've handed them over permanently, it didn't work out for whatever reason. We're not talking about the contractual thing. We're talking about the one whereby you pay your one-time placement fee, they're gone, and then something doesn't work out as...
Yeah.
Do you have to come and start the whole process again?
It's interesting.
What happens?
Yeah, it's interesting. So the people who we place at a one-off placement fee, they still remain as part of the room. They're still room fellows. And in as much as you employ them outright, we still continue to invest in their development, right? So in the unfortunate event, and you're hoping that's not going to happen, but maybe that doesn't work out, right? Or maybe you have to let go of the person, or maybe the person is unethical or for whatever reason. Yeah. We continuously ask for feedback from the employer, and that feedback goes into their file. So in a certain sense, it accumulates into their profile, And, we can actually say, this person is not going to be a room fellow anymore.
Right.
So in a certain sense, there's some level of control in that area where even though they've been placed entirely to the organization, we still keep tabs on how they're performing and we can get feedback, and that still goes back to their profile.
So I'm just looking at this overall process. So essentially what we are saying is that in terms of the knowledge, expertise, skill, there's this guarantee that so long as somebody has gone through the room, all right, differently, so long as somebody is in the room and you come into the room to select this person, the guarantee is that you're not going to have to question whether this person knows what they're doing in terms of skill and expertise. They've gone through, the rigors, they've gone through the motions, they will be able to deliver. Is that what we're saying? That you don't really have to, you're not going to think, can this person actually do it? By the time that you are in the room having the conversation, you can be sure that the 5 options that have been given to you have passed the test, and you're not going to have to go and then start doing another training for 3 months once you've hired them, kind of thing.
I mean, obviously you have to question, right? So in a certain sense, if you think about it, with the previous model where you're getting talent off the market, you'd have to go through 500 CVs to get into a shortlist. For us, because the talent is already vetted, you'd start with a much shorter shortlist. You start with a shortlist of say 5. But even those ones, we recommend that you subject them to the exact same interview process that you already have internally. So if you already have a way of, we usually give them this test, or they have to be interviewed by X manager or Y manager, we recommend that they actually go through that entire process so that as a company, you are comfortable, this person has met our criteria. And sometimes it's simple things as a culture fit. Somebody might be technically competent, but maybe they don't fit into the culture, right? So in a certain sense, it's good for you to still have that layer of checks, only that at the beginning, you're already starting with vetted talent. So there's some level of security that they're technically competent and they have the right mindsets.
When people go through the training on ALX, are there graduated levels of training? For example, software engineering, entry level, software engineering pro, and pro max.
That's very interesting. So within one particular program, so for example, if it's only software engineering, the kind of grading that you have, we can be able to tell you, this person is like the top 10% of the talent pool. That can be done. But then some of the other tech programs that we have are specializations off of the software engineering program, right? So like the data science or the cloud engineer, those people who go through those programs already have a background in software engineering. So in a certain sense, you could say that is the extra level of specialization. But really, within the software engineering pool, it's a generic pool. But we already have a sense of, in terms of how they performed in the different projects that they did, what's the best talent, what's intermediate talent, depending on what you're looking for.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the best way to enter the room is by first going through ALX.
Yeah.
Oh no, the only way to enter the room is by first going through ALX.
Yeah.
Okay. So how does one get into ALX?
Yeah. So our programs are offered online. So if you go to alxafrica.com, you'll actually be able to see what programs are there, and you'll be able to sign up. It's as simple as that. Yeah.
How expensive?
The courses the fees have been waived. As I mentioned before, we have a partnership with the MasterCard Foundation, and our mandate from the MasterCard Foundation is to create 2 million jobs by 2030. And part of doing that is actually lowering the barriers of entry into the formal economy. So that's why we have actually waived the fees for our programs at the moment.
So just go in there, get in, as long as you commit, you've got time and you've the dedication, it's free.
Exactly.
Again, alxafrica.com.
Yes.
And you'll find the courses.
Yeah.
Select one, go through it. After that, opt in to the room.
Yeah, and it's very interesting because it also gives you the option of experimenting, right? So you can try one course, see that it doesn't work out, maybe try another one. So it's really a process of exploration to see what works. I know there are very many people who've started with the software engineering program. Yeah. Then after the first month, they're like, this is really not for me. Do something else. So it's one of those. It's kind of like low risk. Right, if you're thinking about getting into software engineering, you don't want to pay for a full degree, etc. Let me try this out. Let me see whether it works out or not. There are many people who do that, but in a certain sense, it's as simple as really going to alxafrica.com, seeing the prospectus for the different courses, and signing up. The signing up process is a bit long. It may take like an hour and a half, right? And, you know, once you finish that and we are happy, then you'll get selected into the program.
All right. Peter Maina Muriithi is the general manager of The Room. He's been telling us about this very wonderful program that they've been running, starting with ALX, going to ALX, get trained and getting to The Room, and then you get access to very many people who are looking for talent like the one you're going to get through the training. Asante sana for joining us.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you for having me.